Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. We're back on Penn Reels. So just like that, we go from some of the more exotics to, well, some of the more regular reels. But this one is unusual. It's the US Penn Senator. It's an aluminum framed reel. There's a different version of this one called the US Special. But these are all pretty much in that same ilk. They were made in the USA. It's the 113. It's a 4.0 Senator. This one, well, Fielding brought this one in. He brought in several of these. They were had some braid on it, but I went ahead and I removed the line, which I don't normally do. But this one is just so caked with salt and corrosion. It's just, you can see it just flaking up here, that I don't want to risk destroying the spool by leaving that braid on. So that's one of the things I've done, and I'll continue to clean that one as we do the service of this reel. But I wanted to show you this one because it is a little bit different than what you see on the ordinary Senators. But we're going to start this one by taking the external pieces off. And as we do, I want to encourage you to subscribe to my channel. And if you do subscribe to my channel, please use the notification button to make you aware of when I'm posting and what I'm posting, because I work on all kinds of reels. And the reel that I'm working on may interest you, and well, maybe it won't, but if you hit that notification button, you'll see which ones are out there, and you can make a choice as to whether that's something you want to watch or not. All right, well, I'm struggling a little bit right off the bat. We're trying to figure out what the right handle nut is. It appears to be a 12 millimeter. Is it a 12? It's an 11 millimeter. And that's one of the differences right off the bat here with this reel. Most of the Penn Senators have that clamshell handle screw. This does not. This has a different shaft to it. And these reels have been used heavily. And I was told by Fielding, fix which ones you can. Well, I'm sure I can fix all of the Penn ones. But there's some in there that are just, let's just say they've run their course in terms of being a productive member of the fishing community, and we'll see what we can do with those. With that done, we're going to back off your star adjuster, and here's another difference. You'll notice that the star adjuster is very robust and a whole lot different than the chrome single pieces that you're used to seeing. You also notice that we have a click ring under there that we don't have traditionally in the Penn lineup. And then we have a couple of tension washers. There's two of them. This is very much almost a Japanese-like design. You'll find these kinds of bell washers. They're not flat. They are inverted or convex concave. And then underneath that, you're going to see that we have a burring, and that's a big burring sitting there. All right, well, what I like to do and advise you to do is take pictures along the way as you're servicing a reel like this. That way, if you run into any trouble, well, you'll go back to your reference points of the pictures, and you'll be able to see where the next step was one way or another. You can see the burring starting to come out here. That's fine. That'll come out when we take the case off. There's 4 screws, and again, that's a little bit different. This one's holding on a what would have been a harness lug. I'm not sure if that just is inverted or if it got ground down or if that's kind of the way it came with. I don't see a lot of these reels. That's one of the reasons why I figured I would do a video on it, but also to show you some of the differences. And what do we want to say? This is not your grandfather's Penn Senator, I guess. I didn't take a look at this. My estimate would be it was probably made in the late 1990s or early 2000s. And those 4 screws should allow us to remove the mechanism. You can see the inside is completely different. Yeah, what we have here is an inverted one, and it looks like it's not a problem with interfering with the free spool release, so that's fine. We'll remove this little kind of a stud. It's an extension of the spool. I'm going to clean that spool up. You see the same thing on the back here. We have the inverted harness lug, so if you wanted to go ahead and use that harness lug, you can. And then, of course, another major difference here is this is a single piece aluminum frame, as opposed to the crossbar setups or the half frames that come on most of the Senators. Well, there's a little bit of cleanup to do here. As I mentioned, I did want to get in, and I do want to deal with the corrosion on the spool because, well, a lot of aluminum reels are, people think, well, they're not going to rust. Well, a lot of these things, this one's screwed in, fortunately, but on the Daiwas, for example, the old 50H series and the like, these would be spot tacked and they would rip off. So beware. We're going to oil the bearing in the back here. I want to get to this spool and do a little cleanup. As you saw, I was using a knife here to scrape because there is an awful lot of corrosion. And normally I don't take customers' line off. And the first thing is that the line is caked with salt, so that's got to have a degrading effect on it. And secondly, it's got all this pitting under here, and if you just left it like this, the next thing you know, and it used to happen with the old Ocean City reels, the next thing you know is it would eat through and you'd have the holes from the salt damage. Now, you don't want that on this reel. I'm sure the spools are not inexpensive to replace, and you want to do your best to do what you can. You can already see that there's a lot of pot marking going on here, and it's just not a good position to be in. All right, keep knocking this spool shaft off. Well, I'm going to get that off my bench right away because I don't want to have that be an issue for me in transferring that to something else. I'm going to actually put penetrating oil on there. I'm going to get some chrome polish. This courtesy of Scott. Scott sent me a replenishment bottle. Well, Scott, I'm on it. I am using it, and thank you for that. And now we'll use the kind of the penetrating oil as a cutting oil, using the steel wool to extract some of the salts that are in there, and kind of cleaning it up as best we can. And you're not going to restore the holes on there, but you can at least stop the corrosion, or at least as much as you can, by doing what we just did here. So, word to the general public, as I always state, you should change your line annually, and I think if that happened here, you probably wouldn't have these things. This looks like training in dental school. You got all these cavities in here, and you probably would, I guess you would train to figure out how to fill them all, right? All right, well, we got a bearing on the spool here, so we're going to go ahead and clean that up and out. Get that little shaft there, and put that back in. And I oil bearings, so let's go ahead and do that. Then I'm going to take this whole shaft and get my grease brush out. I'm going to grease the side of the one shaft, which is free spinning, and the other. And you can see with this shaft spinning on two sides of bearings, well, that's just going to be a very fine way to spin a spool. All right, just going to set that off to the side for a moment, and we'll come back and we'll do the business end of this reel. This is another interesting design. It's not the pure design that you would see on the other Senators. This one has two levers for your eccentric, two springs for your eccentric, and a different bridge. So let's go ahead and take the bridge off next. You can see that I had mentioned that bearing was going to come out, and underneath that bearing we have a spacer. So what you want to do there is you want to make sure that you noted the sequence on that. And if you got out of sequence, if you lost track of where you were, you either use your pictures, or if you need to, go ahead and get the schematic for the reel. That schematic will tell you how the pieces go in the burst diagram. All right, I'm laying these out to make sure that they are the same, and if they're not the same, I want to note the location of the different ones. Sometimes Penn uses a 2 and 2, a fully threaded and a partially threaded screw. Not sure what they're doing here. We're going to find out as soon as I can get that one out. That's probably got the anti-reverse dog on it. And we'll loosen this side up, and we should be able to push that whole assembly right out. There you go. All right, so what do we have here? Let's get those 2 screws out and verify that. First of all 4 screws are the same. I'm going to take those and put them in the parts tray so that I don't lose them. We have what is essentially a Penn kind of a setup here in terms of the jack and yoke assembly. The yoke is different because of the way that you saw the mount on the spool, but essentially it performs the same function. When you move your jack down, it's going to retract the yoke, and it's going to pull it away from the spool so that the spool can turn independent of the gearing. I just use that. We're going to take these and load those down. Take a picture. I'm going to leave that on there because we're going to go right back and put that back in, and hopefully they don't travel while we're doing this. And let's go ahead and clean all of this out here. You want to make sure when you're servicing a reel that you're taking care of getting all the old greases and oils out of there. They're probably dirty like the line was on this one. And when they get dirty, you want to make sure that you can easily clean it up so that it doesn't transfer the debris to the reel operation. Here's another example of that corrosion that's going on. It's eaten into the plastic. So another reason to get your reel serviced. Same thing up here. We've got the bite going on there as well. Let's take the yoke out. This is a big difference too. You can notice how thick this yoke is. And also some of the traditional Penn yokes are flat. This one actually has a ramp here that's going to guide the 2 back levers here. So there are design changes in this one. It's not a straight up Senator like you might expect. And that's one of the reasons why I selected this for the service video. I'm going to oil the bearing in the back. I'm going to clean off the shoulders on the pinion gear. Inspect the teeth. Now, if these were clogged with dirt and debris, you certainly want to clean them out, but in this case, they're all clean and clear, so we don't need to do that. To clean them out, use a hard bristle brush. That'll get it done. Okay, just using my fishing reel grease. I'm using Penn Precision reel grease for this. Not because it's a Penn reel, but because it's a good grease that's treated me well. I just recommend that you use a fishing reel grease. I really am not that partial to which one. Bill up in Massachusetts just sent me some Shimano grease. I guess I can use that on Shimanos. But for the most part, if it's a fishing reel grease, you're not going to find that much difference with that. Well, I've just noticed already that I've misinstalled the yoke. You want to make sure that the ramps on the yoke face forward with the direction of that pinion gear. Put these both on, press down, and then reverse the way you just took this out. Grab the jack, push it in. Sometimes it's not that easy to get in. Sometimes you need a little assist, but for now that works just fine. This is kind of like a jump rope thing, double dog dare. This has got a different anti-reverse setup than the other. So you're seeing that there's a lot of differences between this US Senator and the traditional Senators. We're going to start by taking off the bell washer. That's the 3rd one that came off here, right? And keeping count. So there's one underneath, and then there's 2 that go on top of the bearing. I'm going to need an assist from my pliers here to get this off. I don't have the hand strength. And here's another piece that you want to note the differences on. So the gears, the main plates of your drag washers are round. And this has I forget the name of it. I call it slammer drag because that's the first place I saw this. The drags are actually acting as the eared washers inside the mechanism. So it doesn't matter what your order is for the metals, other than the top one does not have the square in it. And you want to get all of these out. You want to inspect them. If you find that there's dirt in there, go ahead and use a hard brush as the replacement. And just kind of scrub it all out. You can see how I'm pulling the dirty grease out of that drag washer there. If they were terribly worn, these are not. If they were terribly worn, you would want to come back in and make sure that you replace them before you went any further. All right, we have a spacer. That's actually a bearing, I think. Yep, that's a bearing. And then underneath that we have our shaft. And under our shaft is that ring for the anti-reverse. Okay, let's make sure that we put a drop of oil into the gear sleeve. And let's show you how to reinstall these anti-reverse dogs now. So there is a spring that mounts over these two posts. There's a short side and a long side. I wasn't paying much attention, but I believe the short side goes down. And it goes through the top hole here. When you go to mount the second spring, on this side, it doesn't mount into the hole. It mounts along the ridge on the bottom here. So it goes this way, where the hook of the spring is actually resting against the case. And then again, the same idea here. You want to grab the top of that piece and load it like this. So on the one side, your leg is off the case. The other side, it is through the hole, and the hole is the one that's non-threaded, and the threaded one is going to be for that. And again, you'll see how they work. I'm turning these just like that. With that completed, then there is a hard washer here. So let's go over to the main gear. Just make sure that we're cleared up internally on those. I did a superficial cleaning before, but let's just make sure it's nice and clean. Inspect all of the teeth on the gear. It's a beautiful stainless gear. And let's make sure that that has a nice coating of grease on it. You don't need to go in every slot, but get a good amount of grease on there. It's been quite some time since this wheel has been oiled and greased, so you don't need to use it sparingly. Go ahead and we can set that in. Before we do that, we have that inner bearing. That's going to go on. You can oil that bearing. Now we can take the main gear, put that on. And now it's a matter of just reinstalling. These can get grease or they can be left dry. I'm going to put grease on. These are the Penn HT100 types. What you want to do there, rub the grease in, use your gloved hand, and then wipe off any excess with a paper towel before installing. If you leave the excess on there, it's just going to get squeezed out. All right, line those tabs up with the holes. And now the next group, all except the top washer, is going to have that square inset to them for the keyed washers. Doesn't matter which one goes where. We'll just kind of repeat the process here by lubing up the piece, wiping off the excess, setting them in the holes. This reel has a lot of max drag in it. Max drag is a function of surface area, and the more surface area you have, the more drag you're going to get. And most of the Penn Senator reels have 3 drag washers in it. This one, I believe, has 4. This is the 3rd one going in now. Wipe the excess off, kind of repeat the process. This is the last of your squared ones. And you'll know that because, well, it's just by the time you put that last main washer in, you're running out of that spot there. Again, wipe it down, wipe the excess off. That's your last tag on your main gear setting. Make sure that they're all in there. Just like that. Now we have the heavier washer with the more traditional keyed washer effect is next. Just noticing there's a little bit of stuff here. It would make sense. The top washer would be the one that would catch the salt and the like. I'm going to use a little bit of steel wool to get that. It's a little bit hard to get that off there. It's a little bit of scarring. It's not going to matter too much because it's not contacting the washer, but make sure that that goes on nicely. This is the one we had the trouble getting off, if you remember. And it's going to be just as there we go. And then we have the bell washer, and the cap of the bell washer, the hollow point is below. That takes care of your bridge. Okay, you can test your bridge before. And if I wasn't clear before, the long tag goes low on the post. If you leave the long tag high, it's going to be interfered with by the main gear. All right, it's all greased up, lubed, and ready to be reassembled into the main side plate. We're just going to take everything, turn it in, and seat it properly. There's 2 studs here that are going to seat. That's the important part. And now we can go ahead and get those 4 side plate screws that we had that hold the bridge in. Those are the longer ones. And it doesn't matter which hole you put them in because they're all the same screw. And what I like to do is I like to alternate high and low and east and west. Tie these down. That keeps equal pressure on the bridge as you're doing that. So it seems to be, oh, there you go, it's connecting. Didn't seem like it was catching for a moment there. Let's go over to the other one to tie the other spring down. And we'll come back on this one. And we can finish up with the rest of the external pieces. Okay, we're ready for the side plate reassembly. I just had this little tag fall off. Make sure you meld your spool shaft into the hole of the pinion gear. Aim for that little slot for your tie down. And let's go ahead and get those side plate screws. I got one here, it's a little bit crusty, so I'm going to just kind of lay that out with some penetrating oil to dissolve that. And it doesn't hurt to get oils onto the rest of these. That'll prevent the accumulation of salts again. But a lesson learned in this one, they need to be serviced on a regular basis. Let's call that a year. The line needs to be changed, otherwise you're going to pit the spool. And well, that's going to cause problems later in the performance of the reel. And sometimes it's going to be downright a problem with the spool rotting away to the point where you need to replace it. All right, this is this one. Last one. Then we'll go ahead and rebuild that side. We'll do a final test. We'll see how we did. Okay, if you recall, we had a spacer next. This is where you would go to your pictures if you were curious. We have a bearing. Let's oil that bearing. These are shielded, they're not sealed. Put that bearing on. That should push into the case nicely. Next up then, we had the 2 bell washers. I'm going to put the outer rim where the cavity is facing up, and then I'm going to swap it for cavity facing down on that one. It's just the way I like to do it. And we have that click mechanism, which we said is different. So this whole setup on this 4R Senator is different. You saw differences across the board here in pieces. Just finish tightening that down. You can grab the axle shaft until you have clearance. Use your handle if you like as a wrench. You got your clicker engaged now. So there's just a couple of pieces left in my tray here. One of them is the handle nut. Let's go ahead and put that on. Again, that was that 11mm one that we had. Work it by hand as much as you can. And make sure you tighten your drags down before you tighten that handle nut down. You don't want it to trap the if you trap that star adjuster, it won't be able to perform properly. You had the wrong ratchet in there. Let's just go ahead and fix that now. Tighten it the last bit. You have plenty of room there for adjustment. Let's see how we did. Spin the spool spins nicely. Put it in the gear, drives nicely. And all we have to do then is just put the cap on, say thank you to our first responders and essential personnel for everything they're doing to keep us safe. Wish everybody a fantastic day, and just enjoy the holiday season. Enjoy working on fishing reels. I appreciate you watching and your subscriptions, and I wish you all well. So this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Screwing in this last piece here and wishing you well. Thank you.